Hello YouTube, this is Adam Noyes of AN Productions, and today I'm going to be talking about a very controversial film. People actually put this film on the same list as Cannibal Holocaust for most controversial films ever made. There isn't one video pertaining to this video online that there isn't some sort of huge goddamn debate that has been sparked. I don't agree with that at all. I think this is actually a very fun film, a very decent film, and actually a very well-made film. I genuinely like this film, and stuff like that, but this film was panned when it came out, and I mean panned. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a very certain group of individuals who like to review things panned it. And they attacked this film for being anti-realistic for what was going on in the war, which made me laugh because John Wayne tried to make this, at least for the first half of the film, tried to make this as realistic as he possibly could, and that it included support from the military and stuff. Whatever. And the reason why this film was panned so much was because John Wayne made it. And everybody knows that John Wayne brings about the R word in Hollywood, and the R word Hollywood doesn't very much care for. Yes, that word is Republican. The theaters actually shut down because people were afraid that something was going to happen. It was panned that much. And a part of that, in all honesty, is because this was released in 1968, just after the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. Now, many consider, me included, the Tet Offensive to be that kind of tipping point in Vietnam where everything just started going downhill, and all those reasons why we were there in the first place, I mean, I'll get into that a little later, just started going out the window. And it all started with the Tet Offensive. And that hurt the film. That certainly hurt the film because that was like the pinnacle of the moment where America was anti-Vietnam. First off, I want to make this very clear right now. I do not believe in the Vietnam War. I am not here to say this was a war that needed to happen. No. No. The liberals tried to shut this movie down, and I mean that. Like, they tried. So, hi. Hi. Say hi to the world. Say hi. Hi. It reminded me of this movie that was released recently called Gimme Shelter. That liberals, and it was, there's no two ways about it, liberals attacked this movie called Gimme Shelter. And I thought the movie was excellent. I finally sat down and watched it. And the reason why the liberals attacked it was because they thought it was giving a pro-life message. A pro-life message. Because the story was about this girl who was impregnated and decided, you know what? I want to have the baby. And apparently they thought there was something wrong with that. So now that that's over, let's talk about John Wayne. Now, John Wayne did want to make a pro-Vietnam War movie. That is flat out it's a flat-out pro-Vietnam War movie. And that's because he was worried about some of the anti-war sentiments that were going on all around Hollywood, specifically where he was working. And he believed in the war. He believed in the cause enough to make a movie about it. Liberals do that all the time, but leave it to John Wayne to go and do that, and all the liberals decide to hate him. Though called a movie that glorifies war, it really doesn't, because there is a lot of moments in this film that are very sad, and you really feel a sense of loss when somebody dies. And on top of that, this film is extremely gory. In fact, John Wayne specifically made it a point to make this film gory just to show the horrors of this war, and he's like, yeah, let's go with that. And you know, a lot of people blame John Wayne for escaping the draft in World War II. After doing my research and stuff like that, yes, he did escape the draft in World War II, and people called him a coward. I don't call him a coward whatsoever. If you look at the track record of him and stuff, yes, he went through a lot of shit before that. He was injured bad. The reason why he has that walk is because he got hurt really bad doing his own stunts making a movie. The reason he had terrible back problems, terrible eyesight, and terrible hearing because of this movie that he did where his ears got infected. He worked with Cecil B. DeMille on a movie in 1941. I forgot what it was called, but his ears got infected and he could hardly hear. And he went into one of those tests and he failed. And in my opinion, John Wayne has always felt bad because of that. John Wayne has always regretted that. And that's why when John Wayne made a movie like this, he did his research, and he wanted to promote the military, not denounce the military like we see in a lot of films, especially nowadays. He wanted to promote the military, saying that they are a force of good and that we should love and respect our soldiers, which I completely agree with. And he tried so hard to make up for the fact that he wasn't able to join in World War II, and he tried to make up for it, and unfortunately he was made fun of a lot because of that. He was, especially when this film was released, he was torn to shreds because of that. And in reality, it was all the stuff was out of John Wayne's control. And a lot of people hate John Wayne because of that, and actually laugh at him and call him a lunatic. I don't call him a lunatic at all. In fact, I call John Wayne a goddamn hero. He was an inspiration to me, especially with the making of this film. He had so much going against him. Half the cast hated him because of the message in this film, but yet he still made the film. I respect him a lot for that. And no, I don't completely agree with the message that this film is trying to get. Damn, do I respect him for wanting to make it. Damn, do I respect him for making it. And damn, do I respect him for making what I believe to be a genuine good movie. And the liberals just tore into this film and just ruined everything. They did. They ruined a lot of people's lives because of this film. I'm like, why? Granted, the Republicans did that as well with the stupid blacklisting or the stupid Committee of Un-American Activities, whatever. That, yeah, the McCarthy trials, goddamn retarded. That should never have happened. And none other did that come out, really, with two examples that I found out. One was George Takei. George Takei plays a man named Captain Nim in this movie, which he's such a badass in this film, I gotta say that. But George Takei went up to John Wayne and said something along the lines of, you know, thank you for the opportunity, but I do not agree with what you're making here. All snobby. And John Wayne turned around and said something that I applaud him for. He says, I hired you because of your acting, not your politics. And he was also, John Wayne was good friends with composer Elmer Bernstein, most notable for his scores for films such as The Great Escape and The Ten Commandments. And Elmer Bernstein refused to do the music for this movie because he did not agree with the politics of the film. Which, in my opinion, John Wayne wound up going with composer Miklos Rozsa, which is a much better decision than Elmer Bernstein. No offense to Elmer Bernstein, his music is great. And another thing that brought up a lot of controversy in this film was that they got a lot of financial aid and assistance from the Pentagon and the armed forces. Because the Pentagon knew what this was, and that was a propaganda piece. That's exactly what this is. It's a propaganda piece, one that happens to have really good characters, and you can watch with analysis mode on and enjoy. I'll tell you what, the fact that they were able to get the aid in this film really shows, because there's a lot of great aerial shots, a lot of great helicopter scenes and stuff like that. And a lot of extras in this film as well. There was a lot of detail put in this film. Aesthetically, that I enjoy and I love. Aesthetically, this film is amazing. It's really authentic for the time period. It looks fantastic. It's just great to watch. And John Wayne and the crew did a lot of their research. They did their research. They used a lot of terms and how Green Berets walked and how they were trained. In fact, a few of the actors were actually put through Green Beret training. Yeah, they went through a lot of research in this film. They made sure that the uniforms were absolutely correct. And that goes for all the cast members. You know, they did their research, and I applaud this movie for doing that. They did their research in terms of how characters talked and how characters walked. You know, and again, that's all aesthetics, really. And it's great. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, as many of you know, John Wayne directed this film, but a lot of you don't know that Ray Kellogg was also credited as the second director. John Wayne usually gets the helm, and John Wayne really was the man in charge here. Ray Kellogg was literally just put in to basically to keep Wayne in line, because the last movie that Wayne directed was The Alamo, and that was a huge, gigantic flop that wound up going over time and over budget extensively. Arguably because of it was John Wayne's fault. It was. He wasn't He should have directed a smaller film first and then went to the Alamo. That's how it should have happened, but instead he went to this grand American epic. And though that film, in my opinion, is amazing, he faltered because of it. And the studio hired Ray Kellogg to work with John Wayne to keep him in line. To basically say, make sure that he doesn't go over budget, make sure he doesn't go over time. That helped the movie ridiculously. Ray Kellogg was known for his B movies. I'm going to name two off the top of my head that everybody knows. The Killer Shrews and A Giant Gila Monster. Those are two movies directed by Ray Kellogg. And Ray Kellogg has some talent. Another one thing that studios loved about Ray Kellogg was that he was able to stay within the confines of a budget and actually shoot under schedule. He respected schedules, and he did stuff cheaply and still made them look rather decently. There was this war movie that he made. I want to say it was called Commandos. Anyways, it takes place during the Korean War. It was shot completely on this set, and it was actually really good. It was a really good low-budget film. It really was. And I enjoyed the film ridiculously. Ray Kellogg could direct, and he did keep Wayne both in line and on time and on budget. He did. If John Wayne was to do something a little extensive, he'd be there. Ray Kellogg would be there and basically say, no, we've got to keep moving. And because he was credited as such a powerful second unit director, or second director on the film, John Wayne listened. And to me that's good teamwork, because in my opinion this film is leaps and bounds directed overall better than The Alamo, especially in the way how it's shot and the way how it looks. And I think that's because of that collaboration with Ray Kellogg, and I applaud that for it. I applaud it for it. It made John Wayne got annoyed with Ray Kellogg. Ray Kellogg was the best thing to happen to this film, in all reality. Ray Kellogg sat there and was like, no, I'm going to keep you in line. Because he was willing to tell John Wayne no, in terms of his directing. And he was like, okay. And he'd listen. John Wayne listened. And because of that, I believe the film was better. Because of that. And I applaud it for it. Now, one of the problems I have with this film is that it was filmed in Georgia. Now, if anybody knows what Georgia looks like and what Vietnam looks like, know that they don't look alike at all. It's kind of like filming Peking in Spain. Oh, wait a minute. It doesn't look anything like Vietnam. Vietnam is very tropical, very hot, it's very humid, lots of bogs, it rains a lot. And if you watch this film, especially the first half of the film, there's pine trees everywhere. And I'm like, that's not Vietnam. Vietnam didn't have pine trees. Are you kidding me? It looked nothing like Vietnam. And it left me wondering, why would they film in Georgia? And now I probably think that the reason why was because it was close to a military base, and so that's why they kind of stuck around there. But why not California? I couldn't help but ask that. Why not go to California, where, you know, the plant life, though not like Vietnam that much more, but, you know, at least it looked more tropical, at least there's more swamps, at least there's more stuff they could do in California. Why not go there? It would look better and depict Vietnam at least a little bit better than Georgia. Pine trees, man. Pine trees. That's a problem. And a lot of soldiers who saw this movie pointed that out too and panned the film for it. And that's where they went to the unrealistic thing. And I have to agree with them. I wish they would chose a location more like Vietnam. Hell, why not film it in Japan? Why not? Japan's cheap. They'd be willing to do it, and it's full of Asians. I said that in my 55 Days of Peking review as well. But you know, why not? And there is an American base. There are several American bases in Japan. Why not? But they filmed it in Georgia, so that was a very questionable thing. It wasn't like The Alamo, where John Wayne was going to originally film it in Mexico because it was cheaper, but then everyone convinced him to shoot it in Texas because the movie had to take place in Texas. This isn't like that, because Texas looks like Texas, because Texas is Texas. Georgia is not Vietnam. And it kind of takes you out of the film. And the other thing is, I like the first half of this film, or the first 2/3 of the film, way more than I do the last third of the film. I mean, the first half of the film, it's a very character-driven story about people in war and what they go through. Even though it was very romanticized, it was a very, in my opinion, you could watch it with analysis mode on and enjoy it, because there are some really good characters, and I'm going to talk about my two favorite later. John Wayne is not one of them, I'm going to tell you. John Wayne is doesn't really have a character until the last scene of the movie, to be completely honest. He's kind of the stereotypical badass. But anyways, back to this. And it being a very character-driven story with almost no plot at all, it was just them trying to set up this base and help those around them. The second part of this film, and there clearly is two parts of this film, it's like the secret mission. It's about the secret mission to kill the general. That has absolutely nothing to do with the first half of the film. It just comes out of nowhere. And I believe this is actually done because John Wayne was offered the role to play the colonel on The Dirty Dozen, which was released a year earlier. That movie was a huge hit. He turned it down. He turned down the role, and Lee Marvin got it, and Lee Marvin was praised. And I think John Wayne was a little bitter, to be honest. He was a little bitter and said, well, I'm going to do that here, A Dirty Dozen in Vietnam. Genius. And there's also arguably more action in the final part. Like, it moves a lot quicker. But I like the character stuff, and actually one of the characters I'm going to talk about goes away in the second half of the film and just disappears. And I'm like, God damn it. And I feel like you could have cut this part of the film and it still would have been great. First off, the movie's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. No, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. That's a good length movie. And this whole second half of the film takes place it's about 30 minutes. And I'm like, there, you have a feature-length movie without this. And the first half of the film was ridiculously better, in my opinion, because it focused on what the film should have focused on, and that was the people actually fighting the war. And I was okay with that. And then the second half has the secret mission that is so completely unrealistic and untrue to what was actually going on in Vietnam, when at least the first half was trying. And in many ways, especially with that battle, I believe succeeding at trying to depict what Vietnam is and how brutal of a goddamn war it was. And remember that this was before it really started getting televised, before Vietnam was starting to get all the publicity that it got. That didn't start happening till 69, 70. And again, this was all part of the Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive that came out right before this movie was released, in my opinion, killed the movie with the critics. It did, and kind of rightfully so, because that really did catch us off guard. That horrible, horrible battle caught us off guard. Speaking of the battle scenes, wow. You know, I was thinking of doing a list of like my top 15 favorite battle scenes list. This is on that list. I fucking love that battle in the middle of the film. It is huge, and it's full of energy too. It's not shot like an epic. It's not, because, well, they didn't have the money or the extras to make an epic. However, it was full of energy. It was really full of energy. And there's one part where, like, this reporter goes up that I just love, this sequence of lines, where the reporter goes, like, they're getting fired upon by mortars, and there's an explosion, and this lieutenant pushes the reporter down and says, get down, and suddenly there's an explosion, and you see him disappear. And the reporter gets up, and he's like, what happened to the lieutenant? And the sergeant who's manning the new mortar that's in this pit goes, he's gone. And then the reporter goes, I was just talking to him, and I was like, he's gone, now help us. And the reporter does. I'm going to talk about the reporter later, because I absolutely adore his character, though he's not my favorite character in this movie. But yeah, there's a lot of explosions in this battle. I mean a shit ton of explosions. It's just so awesome. It's just really well done. This was the scene where John Wayne really showed off all that military support. Yeah, he really did. You got helicopters flying over, you got planes machine gunning them, you have all this shit going on. It's a fun battle. And it's gory. It's really gory, especially for a John Wayne movie. It's really gory. There's this one scene where the Viet Cong are trying to cross this barbed wire fence, and one of these sergeants says, hit it. Hits this button, you see the entire fence go up in flames, and you see the bodies still on the flames twitching and stuff and burning. And that caught me off guard. I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that in a film directed by John Wayne. And another thing that I like about this battle was that I was expecting... Miklos Rozsa is known for doing his vast music scores that go over the course of the film. Watch Ben-Hur. He still holds the record for longest movie score ever recorded because of Ben-Hur. If you watch it, there's hardly a scene in the movie where there isn't music playing. And I was expecting there to be music here, and yes, there are a few music cues here and there, but they only last for about 30 seconds each. And this battle scene is long. It's about 20 minutes long, and it's full of energy the entire time, and I adore it for that reason. But there is hardly any music in this sequence, and it's literally just a constant soundtrack of gunfire and explosions. Yeah. It reminded me of the end fight scene from Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, where all the music just goes away and it's nothing but guns firing. It reminded me of that, and it was great. I freaking adored that. Let's talk about some of the characters. And the first character I want to talk about is the reporter. Because the reporter is my second favorite character in the film. Now, the reporter is seen as this pompous asshole, clearly making fun of the liberal media at the beginning of the film, who's questioning the war. And his character arc is that he doesn't really end up supporting the war, but he now understands why we're there. That's what his character arc is. A lot of people said that arguably he is the most unrealistic character. That I don't really agree with that, but they said he's the most unrealistic character because a lot of reporters actually wound up supporting Vietnam and then went over to Vietnam, and then when they came back and saw the chaos that was going over there, ended up not supporting it and became very anti-war. And while this character is kind of the opposite, though he never comes right out and says, yes, I support this war. He never says that. And in my opinion, I don't think he ever is or ever does become in favor of the war. I believe he just looks at it like it is. And he's like, these people need my help and I need to report this. He's still a good character nonetheless. He's a very questioning man, and I think John Wayne's character, the Colonel, sees something in him for that, and that's why he goes along with John Wayne. Now, his character arc doesn't truly begin until there's a scene where this little girl stepped in this trap, a Viet Cong trap, and gets hurt really bad, this little girl, and they're fixing her, they're bandaging her up, and she's looking at his necklace, and he's there. He's just there. He's just taking notes and reporting. And she sees his necklace, and he notices this, and he gives her the necklace. It's actually a very well done scene to see how human everything is in that sequence, because you see her laughing, that makes the medic laugh, and that actually, for the first time in the film, you actually see the reporter smiling. It was a very beautiful moment. That also introduced to him seeing that the Americans were, even though they weren't sometimes, actually most of the time succeeding, they were at least trying to do some good in this hellish world. And he sees that, and that's why I said he still might not be in favor of the war, and I don't think he ever is in favor of the war. I mean, who would technically in their right mind be in favor of a war, but you know what I mean. And sees a soldier, and he sees his soldiers trying so hard to do right that his opinions, at least on the soldiers, because at the beginning he was panning them, at least his opinion on the soldiers have changed. And so, unfortunately, in a later scene, when John Wayne says he's going to go help them, they go back and help the village and just see it decimated by the Viet Cong. And this happened quite frequently. It did. And it was a horrible tragedy. But the reporter goes along and sees that the girl is missing. And so they go out looking for the girl. And they find her dead in a ditch. They find her dead in a ditch. And the necklace was torn off of her neck. And the reporter finds it. And that's the reason why they killed her. The Viet Cong killed her was because they had that necklace from an American on. The look on his face says it all. The look on the reporter's face says it all. Because after that, like, he's just so quiet and so somber, looking around, almost emotionless. Like, he's like, my God. He's like, what the hell? I did this. That's exactly what he's thinking. He blames himself for what he did to the girl, because if he didn't give her that necklace, she might still be alive, but because he gave her that necklace, she's now dead. She was killed by the Viet Cong. And when John Wayne starts telling him about the last village he went to, where he's like, it's a horrific story, and you can tell that John Wayne's character is having a hard time telling it too. A great performance by John Wayne. But he goes, the reporter, the look on his face is a mixture of he wants to break down and he wants to punch somebody. Absolutely amazing performance. Wonderful performance, and I just want to call him out for that. And John Wayne asks, you can leave. You can leave. You can get on the next helicopter and leave if you want, and I won't blame you. And the reporter says plainly, I'm staying, and walks off. because now he has a personal tie to this war. He has a personal tie and he's willing to fight for it. Again, he's still not in favor of the war, he's just now have this personal tie that's gotten him invested. And his character continues during the battle. He helps during the fight scene. He brings rounds to the mortar holes. It kind of reminds me of, there's a character on War and Peace named Pierre who goes to the Battle of Borodino, and while they're getting almost overrun, he actually starts helping the soldiers go around and stuff. It kind of reminded me of that, because he goes in a mortar hole and he's the one bringing the shells to the crew to fire them off, and he's helping out however he possibly can. Now, he kind of, at the ending of the second act of the film, he goes home. He does, and then he's gone for the entire final part of the film. I mean, he just disappears. And then at the very ending, he comes back, which surprises me, which proved my point that now he has a personal tie to this war. And clearly, because there's this character named Hamchunk, who I'm going to talk about later, but Hamchunk comes in, he's got this kid, and he's just this little kid. He really is. Hamchunk is this little kid. And you see that he's got that kid with him, meaning that somewhere over the course of this stuff going on with John Wayne, he came back, got in contact with Hamchunk, and started taking care of him, which is a nice little touch, and very fitting considering what that character's arc is. Now I'm going to talk about my favorite thing about this film, and I truly mean my favorite thing about this film. And that's the character, there's a character named Sergeant Peterson, and his relationship with Hamchunk. It is so beautiful. It really, really is. And in my opinion, it's the thing that really keeps this movie grounded in reality, is this relationship. It's truly the best thing about this movie. If there's nothing else, watch this movie for their relationship, and it's a great thing. The relationship is beautifully well done, beautifully crafted, and it happened a lot over in Vietnam. I'm going to tell you a story about one of my friends. One of my friends, or my father's friends, more specifically, served over in Vietnam and helped with a lot of the evacuations and wound up adopting this Vietnamese orphan because of the war. Adopted this little girl, and she became his daughter. So this, he was a vet, and it happened all the time. That kind of thing happened all the time in Vietnam, and it still kind of happens in other wars or in other places of the world. It happens. It's a beautiful thing. Now, Peterson's overall character is very selfish. He's a very selfish character, and or at least he comes across that way. On the exterior, I have a really itchy foot. On the exterior, he comes off as a very selfish man, where he does everything for himself. But in reality, he's the complete opposite. He has a big, gigantic bleeding heart. And that comes across because apparently his character has served in Vietnam 3 tours and still is going back this 4th time. There's no reason why he needs to. His tour of duty is up, but he keeps going back. And also he's seen protecting a lot of the people during the bombardment, during the night attack. He stays there to make sure everyone is safe, all the civilians are safe, putting his life in danger when he could be hiding or manning a gun. He's there helping the evacuations. It's a beautiful thing, and he's got a very big heart. And the film also manages to foreshadow his death. He dies a gruesome death in this movie, and it's very unfortunate. There's a foreshadow to his death because he's going to help the village, and he's on point, and he runs out, right? And John Wayne manages to stop him because he almost lands on this trap that would have thrown him up against a bunch of spikes. And that was very common in Vietnam. And that's what happens to him in the end, is that he's on point, and he steps on this trap, and it wraps around his leg, and he gets flung up into the tree and hits this bunch of spikes and dies. A horrible, gruesome death that was very common in Vietnam. Now, Hamchunk. Hamchunk is this little tiny kid. A little tiny Vietnamese kid who's lost his entire family. And the relationship between him and Hamchunk is not, between Peterson and Hamchunk is not a father-son relationship. It's not. It's more of a big brother, little brother kind of relationship, which I actually think benefits this film ridiculously. And mainly that's because to Hamchunk, Peterson was the only person left that showed him any compassion. And so Peterson kind of became that de facto kind of father figure in a way for him. And naturally they kind of form a bond, both of them form a bond. And a part of that, I believe, is because both of them needed something to ground themselves. They needed something to ground themselves in reality, so they both kind of mutually, I believe, needed each other. And that's another thing that I really love about the relationship. And it really comes out. Peterson lets the kid sleep in his bed. The kid goes to see him, and they're talking, and then all of a sudden he's like, now get out of here. And Peterson shuts off the light and tries to go to bed, but the kid stays, and looks very sad. And Peterson looks over, it's a great moment, Peterson looks over and says, fine, come up, and the kid jumps over him and just crawls up into a little ball right beside him, and at that point I'm like, yeah, that kid's his. Yeah, there's no way, there's no ifs, ands, or but about it. Peterson and that kid were going to be tied from this moment out. And it makes the ending so sad. It does, seeing their relationship form. During the battle, Peterson leaves his post to make sure that Hamchunk is okay. Now, Hamchunk managed to have this dog, or find this dog that gets killed, and now he literally has nothing other than Sergeant Peterson, right? And so while all this shit's going on, the kid does not know what to do, and he's burying the dog, right? And I have to mention, the music in that scene where Hamchunk finds his dog dead and just walks over to the dog and starts burying him is so heart-wrenching. Seriously, the music for this film, it is so breathtakingly good. The look on Peterson's face when he turns around and sees that Hamchunk is gone is one of pure goddamn panic. If there's anything that I love about John Wayne's directing style, is that he's really good at capturing facial expressions. He's really good at showing, not telling, and I love that. And Sergeant Peterson in this scene is no example. Peterson turns around and he's like, "Oh my God!" And he just a look of pure panic on his face. Great acting. And he immediately drops everything that he was doing and goes out and looks for Hamchunk. That's his number one priority. Not the soldiers anymore, not that Hamchunk. He's got to save Hamchunk. And a beautiful moment. And he goes up to him when he finds him. He says, he asks Hamchunk, referring to the dog, he says he was the only thing he had left in the world. And Hamchunk goes, except you. And then it takes him a second, but Peterson goes, yeah. And then immediately takes him up and knows what he's got to do and runs back to the refugees and brings them there. A beautiful moment. Like, he's like, yep, I'm the only one this kid's got left. I gotta live. I gotta live for this kid. I gotta take care of him. And it hurts Peterson. It really does, because the scene where Peterson puts the kid in the chopper when it's pulling the civilians away, it's such a short thing. Like, you're focusing on his expression. First off, the actor's expressions are hard enough to look at when he lets go of the kid. But if you look at Hamchunk, quickly as the camera is panning over, reaches out for him as he's running away. Beautiful, beautiful moment. And very sad. And there's no music either. There didn't need to be any music. You just heard the sound of the propeller going around. And that worked. And it was beautifully edited. And then Peterson goes off and joins the battle. Now, the final thing I want to talk about in this film is that powerful... Peterson dies, right? And I already explained how he dies. Horrible death. Absolutely tragic. Hamchunk comes back, and he's running through all the helicopters screaming Peterson. He starts crying. He's freaking out. He's panicking. He's just this little kid. He's like, no, 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 no. And he starts actually screaming that. He's like, no, no, no. Like, he can't believe that he's dead. And the reason... he starts panicking. He goes through all the helicopters screaming Peterson. And when he starts screaming no is when Hamchunk sees John Wayne's character off in the distance just staring at him, and Peterson's pack in his hand. And the kid screams, no, no. And the kid runs to the shoreline and just stands there. And there's this line where this sergeant character, I forgot his name, but John Wayne's really close to him. He notices Hamchunk, and then he goes up to the colonel and says, "This is the one time I do not envy you," and then just walks off. And the colonel just looks, and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to say to this boy. John Wayne's like, how am I going to break this news to this boy who has already lost everything? And so when Hamchunk is there crying at the beach, looking out at the shoreline, John Wayne just walks over to him and tells him plainly, and says, "You knew that this could happen, right?" And Hamchunk says, "Yes, but I didn't want it to." very powerful moment in that film. And Wayne's performance in that sequence is so good. It's one of his greatest performances in any movie, period. The look on his face, his movements, his stiff movements of his body, the way how he kneels down in front of Ham Chunk and puts the green beret hat on his head, and then takes his hand and they both walk away into the distance as the sun sets, which is a film mistake, by the way. There's a major film mistake in that scene, because in Vietnam, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. According to that, the sun would be setting in the west, or would be setting in the east. So it doesn't make any sense in terms of that, but I let it slide because the scene got me invested so much that I didn't care. I was invested that much. But the kid cries, and and the kid asks, was Peterson brave? And John Wayne says, he certainly was. And he starts calling Ham Chunk a green beret, and he says this line that I absolutely love. And believe it or not, I believed him when we first entered Vietnam. I believe this is genuinely why we were there. John Wayne says, you're what this is all about. And the movie ends. Beautiful ending. It really is. It's an astonishing ending. So in the end, I give the Green Berets a nothing to be ashamed of 3 out of 4 stars. What's good is really good. It's just that second half of the film just doesn't hold up to the first half, unfortunately. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review. Please excuse my rantings at the beginning. If you want to see more of these kind of reviews, like, subscribe, and comment. Do comment if you've seen this film, what you thought about it. Like Which Way They Walk, my new movie, on Facebook. It's coming soon. We begin production again in September. Like AIM Productions on Facebook, and if you could please, become my patron. I need all the help I can get, and I needs the money. So, this is Adam Noyes of Adam Noyes saying, sayonara.